They're in good spirits. That's what Ryan Day had to say when he got asked about Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. Carnell Tate, who missed his second game in a row, he missed Purdue and he missed UCLA. Jeremiah Smith played 22 snaps against UCLA and then sat out the rest of the day, which he was probably going to do anyway because Caleb Downs also didn't play in the second half. But Caleb Downs wasn't limping up the ramp back to the locker room after the game. And so now we are officially on, hey, Ohio State's two-star receivers, what's up with them? What did you think? How did Ryan Day's answers to some of these questions about Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith specifically and their status hit you, and how should a fan base feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly didn't alleviate any concerns, right? Because, Ryan Day, when asked about the injuries, talked about how, their policies, they don't detail injuries, they don't talk too much about injuries, they let the availability report do the talking. There's been a lot of instances earlier this year where players have gotten hobbled
Every single other situation.
yeah, gotten banged up, and if that guy's going to play, Ryan Day says, yeah, he's fine, we expect him to play. He said that with Carnell Tate postgame against Purdue, where he said, if we needed him to play, he could have played. He's said that with Josh Purdue after Purdue game, was saying, if he's not back for UCLA, he'll be back against Rutgers. We have gotten updates from Ryan Day in the past. That's not to say that just because he said there's no update on JJ and Carnell doesn't mean they're out for the year and it's everything's a disaster. It just means that they're not 100% confident that these guys are going to be available to play against Rutgers, and that's not a particularly great thing when the Carnell Tate situation, it sounded like it was fine. He just sat out Purdue, and he's going to be back, and then he's listed as out the next week. And with Jeremiah Smith, it's fine. He's questionable, but then he plays, but then it looks worse after the game. And you're just left wondering, and there's not a lot of answers from Ryan Day today. And I think if everything were fine, I think we would have some answers, right? Because you're right. There's a competitive edge to, not giving away a ton, right? You don't want to give away as you want to keep as much in-house as you can, but it's Rutgers on Saturday. So what advantage are you giving Rutgers by saying yes or no, this guy will play? And it doesn't really give, and if you want to look ahead and talk about the Michigan game, it doesn't matter because Michigan they'll watch the Rutgers game and see whether or not Jeremiah and Carnell played. And if you say Jeremiah is playing, okay, they still can't stop it.
Right. That's why I never understand the competitive edge thing where it's like, I don't know if Carnell and JJ play, is Rutgers going to do anything about it?
It makes more sense when it's like a quarterback thing and you're like, well, the backup quarterback is a super mobile guy and the starting quarterback is like a pocket passer, right? Then the two very different game plans, right? It's like earlier this year when the Ravens weren't sure if Lamar was going to play. It's like, okay, you're going to get Lamar Jackson or you might get who is there? Cooper Rush, yeah. Two very different styles of quarterback, two different things to prepare for. Anyways, the point is, no update from Ryan Day, which doesn't necessarily feel like the best thing. I don't think it's the worst thing, but if you're a fan who was hoping that you'd walk out of this Tuesday press conference, or that we would walk out of the Tuesday press conference ready to tell you everything's fine, they're both going to play, it's nothing to worry about, I don't think you have that answer right now. And the problem is, I don't know if we 100% know what's going to happen for the Michigan game either. And that's where you start to worry a little bit.
Yeah, because I don't care if they play against Rutgers or not. They're going to be Rutgers.
I probably wouldn't play them against Rutgers.
Even if they're fully healthy, you're going to play them for the first half, and they're going to be sitting doing what we do watching the game. And so the question, did you feel like, based off of the answers Ryan Day gave today, that Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith will not only play, but, be the versions of themselves that they need to be for Ohio State's offense to be what we think it can be?
When? You said
Michigan week.
I think I can't say that with certainty because we didn't really get a lot of certainty, and I want to co-sign everything Stefan said about not having a lot of answers and not kind of knowing, because he's 100% right. And because he got many injury questions today. He was getting asked questions about Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, obviously, whether it was re-aggravations. But then as the press conference kind of unfolded, it was about the injury process and protocols and things like that. And the more that he talked about it, the more I started to just think Michigan. And this might be a situation where, and this is me kind of reading between the lines here, if Jeremiah and Carnell don't play this week against Rutgers, the last image that Michigan would have of Jeremiah Smith is him walking up the tunnel, kind of limping, kind of hobbling, and the last image they would have of Carnell Tate playing would have been 4 weeks prior, and they have not seen him since. And I understand the idea that you were saying about, hey, if they play, so what? They're better than everybody else. It doesn't matter. But I don't think it's necessarily hurting anything to say, or to not say anything, I should say, to leave that open, to let people ponder for 5 minutes if JJ and Carnell are going to play against Michigan. And I think that's probably the way that Ryan Day and a lot of football coaches think, right? That's why teams run the swinging gate on offense, because, hey, if you have to prep for 5 minutes for something else, you're not prepping for 5 minutes for something else, right? That's why teams do this. And I got it in my head. I was just thinking about this, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get it out if they don't play against Rutgers. Maybe this is all kind of by design, and maybe he was very specifically not saying anything because he knows what's going to happen in less than 2 weeks in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and he does not want to give any inclination of what their status is going to be going into that game.
No, I get, and that's not a maybe. That's what he's doing. Every coach does that in America, right? I mean, they do it in high school. I remember when I was in high school, one of our players had an ankle injury. And this is going way back, but we had him dress and act like he was playing basketball that day, and he literally didn't play basketball that day. Yes, coaches play mind games. That's normal.
Fighting RJ.
That's not the conversation. That's not the conversation we're having. Does anybody think these injuries are serious based on the way Ryan Day would? Because Ryan Day got asked, does Jeremiah Smith's injury have anything to do with him getting flipped on his back against Illinois? And he said, not that I am aware of. He got asked, is there anything that happened on Saturday that made whatever he's dealing with potentially worse? He said, not that I'm aware of. We understand why Ryan Day is doing what he's doing up there. Yeah. That's not the conversation I'm trying to have here. The conversation I'm trying to have here is Carnell Tate went from 5 catches for 124 yards and a touchdown against Penn State, and then we haven't seen him since. And he looked fine during warm-ups, and Ryan Day said something was tight. We had no reason to believe anything was wrong with JJ, and then he popped up as questionable on the availability report. And then, Stefan, you and I are watching him go through warm-ups, clearly trying to work something out on his right leg, and then 22 snaps later, he's limping around on the sideline. So, sure, Ryan Day is doing what he needs to do to keep as much information in-house as possible. But from what we have seen, if they play against Michigan, are we confident that they are going to be the versions of themselves that Ohio State needs them to be for them to win that football game the way they need to win that football game?
I think the answer is probably no, because there's nothing that would point you to the other side to give you assurances. And I think an important part of that is, like, there's not really such a thing as don't worry about soft tissue injury. Like, soft tissue injuries are weird. It just depends on the guy. They can look totally fine 1 minute. And that's why when Ryan Day said nagging injury post-game Saturday, I'm kind of just thinking in my head, like, I don't know, man. It happens a lot in baseball where guys will pull a hammy, like, running the bases, and immediately it might not be serious, and baseball teams are like, listen, there's 162 games. Get him out now, because if he keeps playing on it, it's only going to get worse, right? There's situations where with soft tissue, it's so hard to know. It's so unpredictable that it's hard to look at this and say, hey, don't worry, everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, and to your point, are you 100% confident, or can you be confident? Stefan's right. I think the answer is no right now, because we haven't been led to believe anything else right now. Like I said with Michigan, like, our lasting image is the same, right? You were talking about warm-ups of JJ. You saw him hobbling up the tunnel, and that was kind of the last thing that you saw, and you saw him trying to work something out. And the last time that we saw Carnell Tate play football was on November 1st, and they're going to ask him to play. It's November 22nd, I think, is the game against Rutgers, so the 29th is the game against Michigan. There was not information today presented that makes you feel confident that they're going to be 100% healthy, that they're going to be, hey, this looks like Jeremiah Smith. This looks like Carnell Tate. There's the first overall receiver in the 27 draft. There's the first receiver in the 26 draft. Like, you can't be 100% confident right now, not because of anything that Ryan Day said, but because of what we have seen with our own eyes and how we have observed, and frankly, just watching what has unfolded.
Last week we came in here for interviews, and there was one position group that wasn't still on the field when we walked in here. So all of this, I mean, I'm not trying to scare people here. These are the facts of what we have seen in the media. Is Carnell Tate dressed against Purdue, did not play. Ryan Day said it was not that big of a deal. Something was tight. It should not be a long-term thing. Okay, we walk in here for practice on Wednesday. All the wide receivers are already in the locker room. Every single other position group is out here doing post-practice stretching. And then Carnell Tate does not dress for the game on Saturday, and Jeremiah Smith shows up as questionable on the availability report, plays, So that's a good sign, right? Because if it was really that bad, he wouldn't have been questionable. He would have just been out, and they would not have played him 22 snaps in that game. But he plays, doesn't look great walking off the field, but he at least is walking on his own. Again, if it was that bad, they would not have the best player in college football hobbling up the tunnel if it was really that bad. So I don't think the injuries are, whatever they're dealing with, red alert, sound the alarms, Ohio State is in trouble.
Right.
I think they're bad enough that they just need to not play against Rutgers and steal an extra week of rest, but also get these other wide receivers even more experience. Bryson Rogers, who I thought had a good day on Saturday. Mylan Graham had a better day on Saturday. Get more of Brandon Ennis, right? Him in that wide receiver 1 role, because those 2 guys are out. There's no reason to think that there's anything wrong. But if you were looking for reasons to say that there is nothing wrong completely, today's press conference did not give you that.
I think would be the way to say
something. This press conference did not do that. It didn't give you ease, but it shouldn't have also raised your concern as well. Whatever your level of concern was coming into Tuesday's press conference, keep it right there until you physically see Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate running around and catching a football. I'm Steven, that's Stefan, and that's Andrew. Get the text 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. We're back. Here we are. We're on J.J. Carnell watch for the next 14 days until Ohio State gets to Ann Arbor. But first, they got to get through Rutgers on Saturday. See you after the game.